Welcome back to the Rebuilt Parish podcast. On today's episode, we've got Curtis Martin from Focus Campus Ministry in this episode. Now, he doesn't talk just about campus ministry. He talks about the impact that they make at parishes as well. And we can't wait for you to learn all about how he talks about making disciples through relationships. We'll see you inside the episode. Well, hi there, Curtis. Thank you so much for joining us on the Rebuilt Parish podcast today.
Melissa, it's great to be with you. It always is. You guys are doing such great work. So it's an honor for me to spend some time with you all and to be able to move the kingdom forward, hopefully a little bit.
Oh, well, thank you. And we have Tom here again today, too. So thank you, Tom, for joining us once again. I feel like we're having you on the podcast more and more lately.
Yeah. I come on when there's people I want to talk to, and Curtis is definitely somebody I want to get a chance to talk to. And sometimes it's only through podcasts you actually get to have a conversation. And I said, Curtis is a hero to me. I have a lot of respect for Curtis and what God has done through him. And so, yeah, Curtis, just glad that you're on.
Well, right back at you, Tom.
Thank you.
Well, I'm excited to hear a little bit more. So, Curtis, could you start us out by sharing a bit about yourself and what first started your passion for evangelization?
We were chatting offline before we get started. I mean, the reality of the matter is there's not much here. I always like to say it's a combination of God's grace and my stupidity. And it's a great recipe because I can play that game all day long. But I'm a prodigal. I was raised in a great Catholic home, had strong faith, loved the Lord as a young man, got caught up in adolescent life, and found myself a decade later really, really far away from Christ. By the grace of God, in college, I met some evangelical Christians who helped to walk me back to Christ. He was already moving in my life. I was starting to read the scriptures on my own, but had no one to explain them to me. And those evangelical Christians helped me to commit my life to Christ. There was a great moment where I was talking to one of my friends and I said, look, Roy, I'm trying to get my life straightened up so I can start to follow Christ. And he gave me some of the best advice I've ever heard. He said, Jesus doesn't work that way. You give your life to him and he'll help you get your life straightened out. Yes. It's a relationship, not a set of rules, although there are rules. And that reality and allowing Christ to be the center of my life changed everything. I mean, everything in my life. And about 2 years later, I came back to the Catholic Church and the sacraments. And that changed everything because I realized there are great evangelical organizations, Crew, Navigators, InterVarsity, the Baptist, Chi Alpha, that have programs on college campuses. And there are Catholic churches on college campuses, but there wasn't a program or a mission to send students back onto the campus to go meet students where they were and bring them back to the church. So Focus is hopefully stepping into that vacuum. There are some other great organizations that have gotten there as well. And so we're thrilled to be serving along with St. Paul's Outreach, Evangelical Catholic and Catholic Christian Outreach. There are great groups, but we've got to reach young people. We've got to reach everybody with the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so Focus is an attempt to do that.
Hey, Curtis, can I go back a little bit? So this is where I get annoying, but as we kind of warned I would. Go back though, and you don't have to go whatever comfortable detail you're comfortable with. What made you realize you were off course from God, that you had drifted off? And then when you picked up the Bible, okay, you said you were already picking up the Bible. Yeah, that's not always people's first thought. So how did that, what was going through your mind with that?
Yeah, so I think what happens if you step away from God, you also step away from the way you were made to live. And so stuff starts to break down. So, I don't remember any active rebellion. I just remember looking around and going, I'm doing stuff I never thought I'd do. I'm actually lying to friends. I'm lying to my parents. I'm lying to myself. God's not part of my life anymore. And everything was kind of broken. We're meant to live in a relationship. And I didn't have great relationships, even with myself, certainly not with God. And so there was just this sense as I finished high school, I'm lost. I don't know where I'm supposed to be, but I know that where I am isn't working for me. And so there was this great sense you could point to. I like to say, if you want to know my life story, then read the 10 Commandments and take the word not out. And that was my life. And so there was just this general disaster. I didn't know that Christ is the solution, but I come from a Catholic background. When I went away to college, my mom said, hey, why don't you take a Bible with you? And I started to pick it up, and it was a New Testament. It wasn't a whole Bible. And so I re-encountered in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John the person of Jesus Christ, who I never rejected officially. I never renounced, but I realized he wasn't part of my life anymore. And I found myself being captivated in the pages of Scripture by the most captivating person in all of human history, in all of reality, and saying, what happened? And I didn't know how to respond. And that's where the evangelicals came in and helped me kind of connect some dots to really allow Christ, invite Christ to be the center of my life, kind of the prodigal son prayer. I'm coming home, Dad, I've sinned against heaven and earth. Take me as a servant if you want, and was welcomed as a son. And so it was absolutely spectacular to watch, and everything changed. I mean, literally my relationships changed, my hope in life, my understanding about dating, which was very pessimistic. I used to think, about dating and marriage. Well, look, there's a 50% divorce rate. I'm not in the top 50% of guys. I date pretty girls, but they're not in the top 50% of women. Why would you get married? I mean, the odds are way against me. Wow. So I was, discouraged about marriage. All of a sudden I'm meeting great godly women. I'm like, oh my goodness. So everything was changing. My grade point average went up by over a point and stayed up for the rest of my college career. I just all of a sudden had a purpose in life, and that purpose had a name. It was Jesus Christ.
Wow. As you talk about your story of lost, again, I think we talk about parishes, that ache for the lost, the longing for the lost. Yeah. And there's how many more Curtis Martins are out there waiting to be brought back home, and the impact they could have for the kingdom. But that's why it's so important. We have that heart as those. Again, you were kind of coming back, but some of those evangelicals were in your college.
Well, Tom, I think that you're pointing to something that I think is a misperception of a lot of practicing Catholics, and that is that everybody's out there is doing pretty well, and Jesus would be a value add. And my experience is everybody's doing quite badly, and they're waiting to be rescued, and they're waiting for a friend. Now, they're not necessarily looking for somebody to, pound on their door or yell at them about hell or whatever. That's not it. But they're waiting for somebody to meet them in friendship and in trust, and then share the most important things in their life. And it's a rescue project. And I've just watched, what was dozens and then hundreds and thousands and then tens of thousands of people come to life. And it's not just, oh, my life makes more sense. No, I was dead in sin and I'm alive in Christ and everything is changing. And God's calling me on mission to go help other people do that. And so this realization that the people in the world are really actually quite miserable and waiting for somebody to come and love them is, I think, something we hope to awaken. I would love to awaken first through prayer, but then through friendship. There's an urgency. We need to get going right now. And as we've done that, the rewards have been so spectacular to watch people come to Christ and have their lives completely changed.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So many times in the church, we just think people are okay, and we don't see beneath the surface. And like you said, there's just that ache. And yeah, that urgency's got to drive us. Sometimes I feel like frustrated by the church. We're just like, all right, we'll get that done in 3 years. Like, no, come on, let's go. Let's go.
No, and we haven't even talked about heaven. I mean, that's the most important reason. But so this sense of urgency. But I really believe, and I believe that Jesus Christ taught very clearly that this generation of Christians is responsible for this generation of people. And so if you look at that and say, well, we need to get going because we don't believe in reincarnation. Everybody has one life. That's where they're supposed to find Christ. And how are they going to find him if nobody shares him? And so it's not my job or your job to get somebody to accept Christ, but it is our job to make the introduction.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, Curtis, you mentioned that you've helped to form thousands of young adults. So what patterns have you seen in these students when their faith truly comes alive?
Well, it's dramatic. I think you could sit back. One of the ways you could measure it a lot of different ways, and all measurements fall short. If I reduced, my measurements to my marriage, well, how long have I known Michael Ann? How old is she? What does she weigh? I could do a lot of measurements. They'd all be true, but you wouldn't get to the heart of the love story that is my relationship with Michael Ann. And so we could talk about measurements. I think one of the easy ones to measure are vocations. We had more than 100 men enter the seminary. That's pretty amazing.
Whoa.
That's not in 28 years. That was last year alone.
Oh my goodness.
Almost 1,500 men in the last 28 years. And the data that we have would say, not from ourselves, the National Vocation Group did a survey, and interviewed the seminarians, 1 out of 3 guys in seminary said, focus is one of the reasons I'm here. Well, that's massive. The same is true in religious life for women. If you query the number of the women that are in religious life who are under the age of 45, which is really the only group we've worked with, more than a third were involved with Focus. But I think it gets most exciting when you get into marriage and family. We're talking about a day and age when young people are postponing or just not getting married. All kinds of countries are now spending billions of dollars trying to figure out how to get people to have children. And when you look at the alumni with Focus who have been involved in our program, they're marrying earlier, they're staying married longer, and they're having more children dramatically. I mean, we can't even give you an average age or average number of children. I was talking to one of my board members. He says, what's the average number of children for a Focus alumni? And I said, well, it's a bad question. I don't mean to criticize you, but the average alumni in Focus is about 29 years old. I have 9 children. I had 0 when I was 29 years old. So we just haven't had enough time to know. But I will tell you that just an objective thing, one of Focus's largest budget items every year, we have about 1,200 staff members. One of our largest is healthcare. And it's not because people have cancer or they've been in accidents. It's because they're having babies. They're having thousands of babies. And it's beautiful. It's wildly expensive and worth it. But it's crazy. And so we're all in, but that would be one measurement of flourishing. I think people who have hope typically have faith, but if they have hope, they'll have children. I have a niece, God bless her, who doesn't have faith. And she said, why would I bring a child into this world?
Yeah.
And I smiled at her. I said, to make it better. But without that hope, she falls into a large group of young people who just said, yeah, why would we have kids? And so lots of things going on, but those would be some measurements that would say, wow.
So Curtis, how long is it? Focus is 25 years old.
Yeah, 28.
28. Okay. So now you're seeing that fruit 28 years later. Is that fruit you planned on? Is that fruit that's just now you look forward? And how did you in the early days keep moving forward when you didn't see that fruit?
Well, I'll answer the last question first. We actually have always seen the fruit. And I would argue this works everywhere. It works with everyone, and it works all the time. It's amazing. Now, somebody might say, I'm not ready, but they almost never say, get away from me, I hate you. And we'll say, we've been evangelizing for 28 years. The police have never been called once. As far as we know, there's never been a fist fight. The hard no's are very rare. And so people appreciate it. And so we looked at a method, and part of this was based on, before we ever put a missionary on campus, we went and talked to crew and navigators and InterVarsity. We talked to the Mormons. We talked to the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. We talked to anybody who was sending anybody anywhere.
Yeah.
And asked them about it. We looked at the scriptures, and the model is relatively simple. At its most simple component, it would be one person reaches 2. Those two people reach 2 each. That's 4. And it just goes 2, 4, 8, 16. And I have spreadsheets, but you can put this on Excel. If you do that 33 times, you'll reach 8 billion people. That's everybody on earth. And so we're not surprised at the numerical impact. But I always like to say the numerical impact doesn't really tell the story. In fact, it doesn't even tell close to the story, because I could walk into you and say, here's Focus's growth, and that's great. But we have to dig a little deeper, because I could also walk in and say, hey, I have a growth. Well, that's not a good thing. That's cancer. What are you growing? And so it's these people alive in Christ who are not only embracing Jesus as Savior, as Lord, but they're embracing his mission to go make disciples of all nations. When you see that at scale, as we are now seeing hundreds of thousands of people, now there's billions, so it's a drop in the ocean, but it's been growing every year. In fact, it's been growing more dramatically in the last 2 years than in the previous years. We've been on a slope of increase by the grace of God for 28 years, forward, always forward, every year growth. But in the last 2 years, it's almost like a hockey stick. There's a bend towards more dramatic growth. And that's super exciting to see. And we believe that's because of God's grace, but also because maybe 5 years ago, we took a really deep look at how we were imitating Christ. We like to call the method modeled by the master. how well were we imitating him? And we took a deep dive, several years, 2-3 years. Wrote the book, Making Missionary Disciples, that details this, and then implemented in the hockey stick of growth. And so we think the best days are in front of us. And Tom and Melissa, there's articles being written. Something's going on a global level that has nothing to do with focus and everything to do with God, of young people particularly, and young men in particular, coming to faith in Christ all over the world. Now, I grew up in California surfing. I want to go where the waves are. There's a wave of grace. So I want to get out and I want to surf where the waves are. So we want to be where we are right now. And it's seriously exciting. I mean, literally, we measure all kinds of stuff. Everything we could possibly measure is up right now. There's just not any bad news. Now, people are suffering, and it's hard to be on mission. And there's always challenges. You get 1,200 people on mission together. We're all of us are faithful, all of us are prayerful, but we still throw elbows. And so, we're broken people. And so it's not that there's no problem, but everything we can measure is dramatically up. And in the last couple of years, it's really fun to watch the fields going white for harvest.
At Rebuilt Parish, our mission is simple: to make disciples by helping parishes make disciples. Every day, we see lives and communities transformed when parishes come alive in faith. When people who've drifted away come back to church, and when priests and parish leaders are equipped to lead with confidence and vision. That's what your generosity makes possible. When you give to Rebuilt, you're not just supporting a ministry, you're helping transform lives. You're helping people encounter Christ, deepen their faith, and share it with others through thriving, mission-driven parishes. If you believe in the mission of renewing parishes and bringing people into closer relationship with Christ, please consider making a gift of any amount today. You can learn more or make your gift now at rebuiltparish.com/give. And together, we're making disciples, one parish at a time.
So, Curtis, I have like 100 questions that come from what you just said, but let me just ask this one. How do you surf those waves? Like, what are you doing right now? Because that's a great thing for people listening to this. I'm in a parish. I'm working in parish ministry. So often we hear the negative stuff, but there is a wave of grace and a revival coming, I think. But I'll be honest, I don't have it. If someone said, what do you do about it? I'd be like, I'm not sure, except keep working hard, or keep partnering with God. But how do you answer that?
Yeah, I would say my experience is that 28 years ago, or even 30 years ago, as we were talking about focus, the attitude was, why would you evangelize? I don't think Catholics are supposed to do that. I mean, there was really just a lack of sense. I think Protestants do that. I don't know if Catholics evangelize. And we're like, no, this is what the church teaches. This is the essence of what it means to be a Catholic. That's a change, and it's wonderful. People are now like, yes, we should evangelize. No idea how to do it. And I would say the typical mode of evangelization for most Catholics is osmosis. If I sit next to you, right, you might catch it. And that's a crazy proposition, right? The example I give is, let's say I found a great Italian restaurant, and you're my neighbor, Tom. And you see every other Tuesday, Michael Ann and I leave around 5:30. We drive away and we get back about 8:00 and we're really happy. And we go in our house and you're like, this is happening every other Tuesday. I should probably get in my car and follow them and figure out what they're doing. Nobody's ever going to do that. And so osmosis, while it can work, but that's not what Jesus said, go make disciples. So we would say that it's strategic, it's systematic, and it's repeatable. Kind of like farming. Most Catholics are like hunter-gatherers when it comes to evangelization. Hey, I found something. Let's have dinner. No, farmers actually cultivate crops so that their family doesn't starve. And there is a way to cultivate the crops of souls through prayer and sacraments, through friendship and engagement, and through a clear articulation of the gospel of Jesus Christ that works strategically, systematically, and repeatedly, way better than osmosis. And that's what we've been experiencing. We could get way better at the strategic and systematic application, and that's what we're working on and praying on all the time. And I'm grateful we could get better, because if we couldn't, I wouldn't have a job, right? If there weren't some problems, they'd fire me and Focus would run itself.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And so that's what we're trying to work on. The cool thing is Focus is trying to do it one way, but it has nothing to do with Focus. We're just looking at the Bible and the church's teachings. Other groups could, other people could implement this in their own way. It would look differently. We targeted college campuses as the first place. You could target middle school students and should. I mean, somebody needs to go to old folks' homes and reach them too. I mean, anywhere, everywhere, there's room on the field for everybody. But Focus has an iteration. I think it works pretty well by the grace of God, but we want to get better at it. So I would say, have hope, and then look at what Jesus did. Wild, crazy business plan. Tom, listen, you've been very blessed and had an impact on a lot of people. We meet with people all the time. We all do. And when I look at, say, for example, Catholic businessmen and women, they would never do what Jesus did. Jesus has to reach the whole world. He's the Savior, not just of the world during his lifetime, the whole world throughout all of history. And his strategy is to find 12 guys and go camping for 3 years. That's a mentally ill proposition, unless the God-man did it and said, imitate that. And we would argue that's the best plan. Don't try to reach everybody. That's also cool. He fed the 5,000, but his strategy was, I'm going to get these 12 guys so deeply that when I'm gone, under the power of my Spirit, they will radiate throughout the world, which is exactly what they did. And that can be replicated and has been replicated. It's what St. Francis of Assisi did in the 1200s. When there's been renewal in the church, this is what the model has always been.
So if you come back, as you see God's doing something in our generation, it sounds like you're partly just doubling down back on the strategies that work. And
it's what St. Ignatius did when he founded the Jesuits, right? I mean, I love the story. It actually was impossible to fulfill the Great Commission prior to the life of St. Ignatius of Loyola. 10 years before he was born, we discovered the Americas. We didn't even know all the continents to make disciples of all nations until the life of St. Ignatius. And then by the working of God, he came to Christ. He led Xavier to Christ and others to Christ, formed the Jesuits. And literally in his lifetime, they had Jesuits in every continent in the world, fulfilling the Great Commission. But it was Ignatius going deep with the men in his life and teaching them to do the same, and then sending them out with deep faith and wild heroism to encounter wild opposition. And the impact was extraordinary. It's the same recipe, and it's available to us right now. And I think the time is right, because the waves are up. There's a grace movement going on right now.
I love that. Now, Curtis, you've shared some incredible wins with us. You've shared some incredible numeric wins, even though it's not about those numeric wins, which I still love. Just what you're doing with Vocations, I think that's incredible. One thing I would love to know is, can you think of one person, right? Maybe one person who was lost and Focus made that impact in their life. Can you share a specific story with us?
Yeah, I mean, the fun thing is there's a series of stories, but I'll give you one that comes to mind real quickly. There's a young gal who is a freshman in college. She's on a golf scholarship, and she shows up at a campus she's never been to before. It's first day of freshman year, and she is all alone. And you know that sense of being we've all been alone, but then there's a sense of loneliness in a crowd. So she realizes that people all around her, she doesn't know any of them. And in fact, they're in clusters and they're talking. And now she's feeling really alone and self-conscious and doesn't really fit in. And there's a group of people on the quad, and they're, 7, 8 people, they're gathered and they're laughing. And that's the difference. Other people are together, some people by themselves. This group's laughing, and she finds herself drawn just kind of over towards them. We're all kind of attracted towards joy and happiness and laughter. And as she does, the group opens up and makes room for her.
Wow.
She doesn't fit. She doesn't know them, but they open it up. And she's kind of listening and watching. And she's like, these people are happy. I'm lonely and afraid. And they welcomed her. They learned her name. And after a while, they said, well, we're going to grab some pizza. Hey, Amy, you want to go grab some pizza with us? And she was like, I don't have any other plans. She said, all of a sudden, I felt amazingly welcomed by this group. I didn't know that they were Christians. I didn't know that they were Catholics. I didn't know that some of them were focused missionaries. I didn't know any of that day. And it was weird because I was raised Hindu outside of the United States. And by Christmas, I wanted to be a Catholic.
Wow.
And by Easter, I was.
Whoa.
And then Amy finished her career in college and became a focused missionary for 8 years, spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ all over the country and around the world. And now Amy's working for a wonderful pro-life center here in Denver. We're still very close. She actually coaches us a little bit in golf because she's really good. And teaches our family how to golf better. And but this would be just one story of somebody who Jesus wasn't on her radar screen. She had never been raised with the concept of Jesus, but through joy and friendship. And this group of people were praying every day. It's so important that we're close to Christ in the sacraments and prayer in the scriptures. And we don't have what the world is looking for unless we stay close to Christ, because he's what they're looking for. But when we're close to Christ, we have what they're looking for. And that's the recipe.
Two thoughts from that, Curtis, of what you're saying. One, again, the very simple thing, the power of welcome and acceptance, and that's what we are trying to help parishes do. And it sometimes sounds so stupid and so simple to say, have people smiling on your parking lot, to open the door, to say welcome, and we're glad you're here. Well, don't people know they're glad and they're welcome? No. And like you said, there's a loneliness out there in the world that people don't know it. And it's Dallas Fuller says something, to simply welcome another. It's one of the most human and life-giving things we can do. And the way we can lay down our lives for people is just to welcome them. And so, it sounds so simple and yet so powerful, that moment for Amy. And obviously that, the church, we're trying to do it in the big way through the hospitality ministries. But again,
well, you all led the way there. I think that you kind of coined this within Rebuilt, and the sense of, come on, let's just rethink from top to bottom. Yes, the core of what we're doing, the Mass, is essential, but how we do it, starting in the parking lot, isn't being done well. I was talking to a guy recently, and he's an intellectual convert. He was not raised Catholic. He was actually very involved with the Jehovah's Witnesses, but read and prayed his way into the Catholic Church. And he said, Curtis, this is not a friendly group of people. I feel wildly unwelcome when I go to Mass still. And I'm like, yeah, we got to work on that. That's something that can change so easily. Are we delighted that people are coming? And one of the stats, and Tom, listen, I know you know this, but statistically on a Sunday at an ordinary parish, almost half the people that are there don't come every Sunday.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Now, at first you could say, well, that's a bummer. But if you owned a car dealership and you knew that half the people on your lot did not own a car, that would be awesome. Let's go into sales mode. But we're not in sales mode at Mass. We're not welcoming people. And so we've got to recognize that Sunday Mass is the greatest opportunity. And Tom, you were one of the first to really highlight this, write about it, and teach it to others. That's our best opportunity. They're coming to us and we're ignoring them. Let's just welcome them. Now, there's lots more can be done and should be done, but that's a great beginning. And so I think we're at a unique moment where parishes they didn't think it was possible. And thanks to Rebuilt and thanks to other efforts, people are now saying, okay, it's probably possible. So how? And that's where we are, I think, in the development of shifting the culture of parishes to be more evangelical, small e, or Catholic, capital C.
Evangelical Catholics, yeah.
Yes. So I think it's an exciting time. And I just would give you, Tom, a lot of props, because I think you've been at the tip of the spear here for a long, long time.
Well, thanks, Curtis. The other thing I wanted to say is, it was interesting. I mean, well, you had that question, but you had a story in your mind. And I think that's one of the things our parishes need to do, our pastors, or, when we're asking people to serve, to give, to get engaged in the church, to have those stories of impact that you just had right there. And again, and you had the whole ripple effect that, again, we have to celebrate those stories of what God does. I love the word, the testimony means to do it again, and that God does something again as we share those stories. And so, and to share those stories of impact, because it is inspiring. Hearing about Amy is inspiring. Hearing those stories of impact inspires others to get involved in the life of the church. So I just wanted to point that out to anybody that's maybe parish leaders listening to this.
No, and I think that there raises the questions well, then how do you evangelize specifically? But a part of it is, what's your story, and do you know other stories? And anybody can learn that. You don't have to be a theologian. There was nothing theological about what I just told you about Amy. It was relational. It was personal. And yes, we should also be theologically grounded and true and accurate to be able to explain what it is that Jesus did. Because here's a funny thing. I mean, if Tom, if you and I were not getting along, and I sent my son to you, and you killed him, that would not make things better between you and me. But somehow God and us are not getting along, and God sends his son, and we kill him, and it makes everything better. And so what's going on there? Somebody should explain that, because it's a little weird. And there's a wonderful explanation to see what's going on. Yeah, and we should learn that. But before you learn that, you can still sit back and say, allowing God to be the center of my life has made everything else in my life way better. There's no theology there. It's just, this is my testimony.
I love that. Tom, I feel like we were talking about that a little bit too. Before Curtis got on, we were just talking about getting up early. And I was like, if I don't take that time for God before I go to the gym, it's not going to happen during the day. And then the whole day is lost. We have to make him the center and a priority.
Now, I have 4 of my 9 children still live at home. And I was just talking with my 21-year-old who's on a gap year. I hope it'll just be a gap year. Anyway, he's a great guy. And then I have an 8-year-old son.
Offline, Curtis, at some point. Anyway.
And I have an 8-year-old son who's a senior in high school. And we were talking literally last night. And I said, so here's the deal. We should get up 15 minutes earlier. There's a little section in our house that's got a crucifix and an image of Our Lady of Guadalupe and a couple of relics. And just get up. This 15 minutes. We read the gospel from today's Mass. It's going to take 3 minutes. We sit for 3 minutes quietly, prayerfully, and then we talk for 3 minutes. That's a 10-minute exercise. I'll get up with you 15 minutes early if you'll get up with me. And they were like, we're in. And so just this opportunity, and it's again what you said, Melissa, really the best thing to do first thing in the morning. It should always be the first thing you do in importance. Sometimes we might have to reschedule. It's not the very first thing we did. Years ago, I got invited to a 7 a.m. Mass with Pope John Paul II. The first thing I did was get up and get dressed, take a shower and get dressed for Mass with the Pope. Didn't mean I didn't pray later, but I got bumped by something more urgent. But the most important thing we do is, are you making time for God every day? Really more important that it's every day than whether it's 5 minutes or 50 minutes. You can always increase the time. It's the consistency that's so critical. And we're big believers in meeting the Lord for prayer first thing in the morning, and then throughout the day also. We pray the Divine Mercy Chapel here at the office. We literally, on our phones, the office phones, there are bells that go off like a church.
Wow.
10 minutes before 3 o'clock. So that everybody can sit back and say, all right, I'm going to put my work aside and we're all going to gather at 3 o'clock and we're going to pray the Divine Mercy Chapel together. Super cool. And then everybody goes back to work. But I love that thing that you just said, Melissa. This is the first in importance and probably should be the first thing we do almost every day.
For sure. Now, Curtis, you shared a beautiful example with Amy, and I'm really curious to hear, what is the methodology here when you send a campus missionary to campus? What's the strategy? What are they doing? You mentioned how they find one and that one or they find two and those find two, all of that. But can you share a little bit more about what happens?
Yeah, so it's super ordinary and wonderfully extraordinary. So I think the first thing to kind of maybe go back for a second is the thing about evangelization is we have no ability, zero, to evangelize others. But we have a capacity to draw close to Christ, and Christ can evangelize people. So the analogy we've used, kind of based on something the church father said, is imagine a pot that you wanted to boil some water. The pot has no ability to boil the water. You have to put the pot on a stove and turn the stove on. Then the stove gets the pot hot and then the water boils. We're like the pots. Pots by their nature are room temperature. That's what they are. But according to my human nature, I have no ability to evangelize anybody. So how do I get on the stove and get hot? And that's the Catholic life. Are we making it to Mass regularly? Daily Mass even. Sunday Mass and holy days all the time. Daily Mass when possible. Do you pray every day? First thing in the morning. Do you pray the rosary? Do you make a holy hour? There's all kinds of things. So our missionaries live a certain pattern. It is prayer, Mass every day, rosary every day, Divine Mercy Chaplet every day, spiritual reading every day. And so they're hot pots. Now, what do? Well, you go out on a campus, you go into a parish as a hot pot, and you just befriend people. We like to say, go do things with people that they like to do that are moral. We started on a college campus. You have to make that clarification. So, it's what Jesus did, right? But you like hiking? Let's go hiking. You like ultimate frisbee? Let's play ultimate frisbee. Whatever you want to do that's moral, I will do with you. And then as we develop a friendship, you'll want to do some things that I want to do. And that creates the pathway to draw people back to faith in Christ. We don't tell people you ought to pray. We say, want to go pray? We don't tell people to go to Mass. It's, hey, there's Mass. It's at 8 o'clock in the morning. 8 o'clock in the morning. I'll walk by and come get you at 7:30. I'm going to go with you. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm going to invite you to join my life.
Yeah.
And which is what Jesus did. He did not, well, he did, right? He told us what to do thousands of years earlier, the 10 Commandments, and we broke them before Moses even got down the mountain. But when he came and he lived with us and said, follow me, that changed everything. And so we're not telling people what to do. We're doing it with them. And it's just this super wonderful pattern that Jesus modeled first. And then really, I think, commanded us, the Great Commission, with all authority. I'm telling you to go make disciples of all the nations. What's a disciple? Is more than a believer. Disciple is somebody who takes on the discipline, the habits of Christianity, the habits of Jesus. And Jesus was a man of prayer. And so that's the pattern. And it's all spelled out in the 60-page book, Making Missionary Disciples, where we literally, at 25 years of work, we went back and looked in the rearview mirror and said, where are we bearing the most fruit? Let's go talk to those people and ask them what they're doing. Let's distill this down so that anybody could do it, whether they're involved with Focus or not, where we could be consistent, whether we're at Harvard University or at UCLA or at Benedictine College, it would look the same.
Yeah, that's great.
And I know next week's my anniversary, and I'm going to take my wife to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. We love steak.
Whoa.
And you know what? I've never had a bad steak at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse because they follow a pattern. They buy really great steak, they cook it really well, and present it with great ambiance. It's great every time. It's expensive. We don't do it very often. We have gift cards. And so we're going. But that repeatability is so important. And the pattern is simple. Any believer in Christ can do this if they follow the pattern that the church recommends and that Jesus set for us.
Yeah, it's predictable success. And, it's when we talk about invest and invite, friends, family members, coworkers that don't have a church, and then invite them to come check out our church, right? It's the same idea. Just invest in those relationships you already have, and then invite. And I think sometimes the key part we need to say is, and then go with them. Don't just say, oh, you should come to my church and not be here. Like, hey, like, I love it. Like, pick you up. Or we always say, take them to breakfast, take them to dinner, right? And try to teach our community that's what we want you to do and expect you to do and hope you'll do.
Yeah. Years ago, we had a gentleman who was working with us. He was a Protestant convert. And I had known him during his conversion process. And he was telling me the story. He was reading and praying his way into the church. He was like, I have to come to church. And he had an appointment with Archbishop Chaput, who at the time was the Archbishop of Denver, and a dear friend and a spiritual father to me. And Archbishop Chaput at one point in time said, John, why do you want to be Catholic? And John said, oh, you don't understand, Archbishop. I don't want to be Catholic. I have to be Catholic. And the Archbishop thought for a moment. He goes, well, come on in. The water's freezing.
That's good.
But it doesn't have to be freezing. We can make it better, more inviting.
That's a great line.
No, it really is, it's true to some degree. I think the renewal that's taking place, and it's just getting started, but it's taking place in a profound way in parishes, and Rebuilt has been the leaders here, along with some others, but you guys have been really, I've told you this before, what you all did was not just try to figure out how can we make our parish more inviting, more effective, and a more delightful experience. You also, and this is the really remarkable part for me, you also then took the time in your busy lives to write and to teach others. That's the crazy part that we don't do. That's making disciples. And that transformation is beginning to happen. The waters are warming, if you will, which makes it super easy comparatively for people to come in. And I think we're now seeing that where there's a renewal of faith of all ages, but in some ways being led by the young and in some ways being led by young men. And it's wonderful to see what's going on. And Rebuilt, this would not be taking place the way it is right now if it hadn't been for you.
Well, thanks, Curtis. Appreciate that.
What if your parish could experience renewal that starts with inspiration and leads to real transformation? At Rebuilt, we love sharing the message of parish renewal, how ordinary parishes can reach the lost, engage the faithful, and build thriving communities of disciples. Our team travels to parishes and dioceses across the country for keynotes, workshops, and parish missions, including Lenten missions that invite people to encounter Christ in a fresh way. If you're planning your next parish event, conference, or mission, consider bringing Rebuilt to your community. Whether it's a single talk or a full weekend experience, we'll help your parish dream bigger, take the next step, and imagine what's possible when renewal begins. Visit rebuiltparish.com/speaking to learn more and start the conversation today. Let's rebuild the church together.
Well, I think about, Curtis, what you're talking about with making the water warm. You know, I feel like it's a beautiful way for, as parishes start to make these shifts and make these changes to become more welcoming, that's going to pave the way and make it a little bit easier for your missionaries doing work too. Because if you're in a city with, not a great welcoming parish, that might make it a little harder on your missionaries to get people to come to daily mass with them or to come to mass on the weekend. But if you're in a city, let's say you're in Timonium, not going to be super hard to get them into mass. It's going to be an easier experience for your missionaries.
Yeah, we're preparing, I'd absolutely agree with Melissa. We're preparing for Seek, which is an annual conference that we sponsor and have been. It wasn't always branded Seek, but we've been gathering every year for 28 years. And this year we'll be in Fort Worth, Texas. We'll be in Denver, Colorado, and in Columbus, Ohio. And we started with 20 students. And then it moved, and we'll have over 30,000 there this year. It's every year, it's just a snowball. And people will say, I thought I was weird when my faith started to come alive. And then I went to Seek and realized, oh my goodness, there's all kinds of people that are experiencing this. And that momentum, that flywheel, if you will, where you push and push and push and it doesn't move. And then the flywheel starts to turn. And actually after a while, just as hard as it was to get it going, it's even harder to stop it because it's got momentum. Mm-hmm. And so to have this sense of growing momentum is really wonderful. And it does facilitate conversions by the thousands, by the tens of thousands. And to be able to see, just seeing other people come alive in their faith is inspiring. If I'm all by myself, I mean, I could tell you when I returned to the Catholic Church, I was 21 years old, and I thought I was like the first salmon that ever had the idea that I should leave the ocean and swim up a stream. I mean, it was just like some crazy proposition. Why would I become Catholic? And I'd go to daily mass, and I wasn't back in the church yet, so I wasn't receiving communion, but I started going every day, but I wasn't receiving. But when I walked into the church, the average age of the church went down by 30 years because it was a handful of 90-year-old women and me in my 20s. And why, if this is true, why am I the only 20-year-old who sees it? Mm-hmm. Whereas when you look around and say, oh my goodness, there's momentum here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's where healthy parishes, because the Catholic Church is interesting. Catholics don't read the same books. They don't listen to the same music. They don't vote the same way. They don't do anything together except go to Mass. It's the one thing practicing Catholics all do. And if it's a great experience, if that's where the momentum is, there's the recipe. And to be able to sit back and see that. And so the parishes we worked with initially were exclusively campus ministry parishes, Newman centers or chaplaincies. Now, in the last couple of years, as we've started to move also into sending missionaries full-time into parishes, people say, well, what's the difference? Actually, I'll talk about the differences. There are a few. It's actually way more similar than it is different. Unbelievably similar. We actually anticipated that we'd have to modify the program dramatically, and then maybe not dramatically, but significantly. Actually, it looks really, really, really similar on parishes on the East Coast, campuses on the West Coast. This model that Jesus modeled himself is something you can repeat over and over and over again. It works everywhere, all the time. We just have not seen it fail because Jesus has blessed it. And so it's very exciting to see. And this momentum thing is key.
Yes.
Yeah, you need, like you said, that the crowd, a large group of people to make you feel like I'm not alone in this. And if you can get that, then continue to create momentum and ride that momentum.
Yeah, I remember years ago being at George Mason University, and we were just getting started there. They had a new priest, Father Niceta, and it was awesome, and it was growing. But they had a Mass on campus. They had a Newman Center nearby, and it was just rebuilt. It was state of the art. But we had a Mass on campus in one of the rooms at the center of campus. And there's maybe 30,000 students at George Mason, and I think there were 5 of us at Mass. And I'm thinking to myself, if this is the most important thing in all of reality, how could only 5 people out of 30,000 people figure this out? Now, part of it was they hadn't been invited. There were lots of reasons. But that sense of momentum, and the fun thing is that state-of-the-art Newman Center, they're tearing it down because it's too small. They're building a much bigger Newman Center at George Mason University now because they just need more space. And it's really amazing to watch the momentum across the country, really around the world, building. And what we need are leaders who can help equip others, encourage others, so that this momentum is there. It's not, will God draw people back to the faith? It is, will the church welcome them when faith is awakened within them? Because if you come back and you're simply reminded of why you left the first time, you're going to leave again. And now it's going to be really hard to get you to give us a third try.
Right.
And so it's super important that we get this right. I think it's the work of the church to nail the welcoming, the reception. God will take care, for the most part, of the evangelization. We should also do that. But if we just care for the people that God already was just bringing, we'd have 85% of the work done already.
Ooh, I love that. I was going to ask you a question that asked, what about the parishes who want to focus on evangelization? What would you recommend? And I'm hearing, and I'd like to hear if there's something else too, but what I'm also hearing from you is take care of the people you have there, be welcoming to them.
Yeah, several years ago, Archbishop Aquila, who's our Archbishop here in Denver, and he's on the board of directors for Focus, and he's a very good friend. Just baptized 2 of my grandkids in the last couple of months. We're close friends, and he called me and he said, this was a couple of years ago, and he said, Acts 29, Catholic Christian Outreach, Focus, they're all approaching me, and which do you think I should do? And then he interrupted me and said, never mind, I know what you're going to say. You run Focus. And I said, no, you don't know what I'm going to say. Bet on any horse you can. You don't have time. Try anything that'll work. I can't predict the future. Bring them all. Worst case scenario, they all work. How would that be terrible? So the how you do it is really secondary to that you do it. And so Focus sends missionaries, and that's great. Rebuilt has created a blueprint that can be replicated in other parishes. That's great. Acts 29 is doing great work, and we're big fans. Catholic Christian Outreach, which is a Canadian organization, but they actually have some parish work here in the United States, actually here in Denver, and run by wonderful friends of ours. There is no competition. Sometimes we feel like that. It's crazy. If I if I wanted to buy a car dealership, I would buy a lot right next to a bunch of other car dealerships. They come in clusters. If I wanted to have a fast food restaurant, I'd find a corner with other fast food restaurants on the other corners. Same with gas stations. But somehow as Catholics, we're like, oh no, you're in my way. You're competing. That's not the way people work. They go to the part of town that has the grocery stores or the car dealerships. And we need to recognize, focus, rebuild, Acts 29. None of us are going to reach everybody, but together we'll reach more people. Now we got to be careful that we don't step on each other's toes and we play well together in the sandbox, all of that. But we should be doing anything and everything we can to do as much as possible. Focus has a certain flavor, and some people aren't going to choose that. St. Paul's Outreach, which is a great outreach that works on college campuses, are more relational. They tend to rent houses together. Maybe that's going to appeal to you. Go for it. We're more evangelical and more out there churning the things up. Maybe you'd rather be with us. That you're with Jesus is all that I care about. I hope he gives us enough people we can keep our program going. But if he doesn't, because he blesses other programs, then we're done. We're a tool in his toolbox. And if the carpenter says, I don't need my hammer right now, I need my screwdriver, and he puts the hammer down, we're done. We serve at his pleasure. But we think the opportunity is amazing, and that really parishes should be looking. If I was going to draw a distinction, Melissa, I'd say, I think what might distinguish, let's say, Focus from OCIA, or what used to be known as RCIA. So I want to join the Catholic Church, where you're going to get involved in the OCIA or RCIA. There's nothing wrong with the program. It's a good program. It doesn't work, but it's not because it's broken. The reason it doesn't work, and we know this statistically, is just because the leaders themselves are not living as disciples. And you can't give what you don't have. And so you get a well-intentioned person who wants to teach the faith, but doesn't experience their own faith as discipleship. The program just doesn't work. And it's not that it's broken. I would equate it to a state-of-the-art electric oven that isn't plugged in. It's not broken, but it doesn't have a power source. And so we'd like to think of Focus Missionaries not as another appliance, but as electricians who make sure the wires are connected. We're connected so that the people running OCIA are on fire. And you know, Tom, that when the people leading your programs are living as disciples, the programs work.
Yeah, it's a great point.
So that's the whole point. We're not trying to compete. We're not trying to build another program. We don't want to be a youth ministry program. We'd like to work with parishioners in your parish to be on fire who say, I want to work with the youth. Great. That youth ministry program is going to rock and roll, because what you particularly do in youth ministry is actually secondary to the people who are leading the youth ministry. I like the example I'd give, Melissa, is Scotty Scheffler's the best golfer in the world, and I'm a bad golfer. I also have some very mediocre golf clubs. And Scotty Scheffler has the best golf clubs money can buy. Not that he has to buy them. They give them to him. But if I got to play golf with Scotty Scheffler, and right before the round I said, hey, let's switch clubs, he would still beat me by just as many strokes, because it's not the clubs. They help a little bit. It's the guy. He has the habits. He has the consistency and that makes him great. And so our tools, what programs we have, what golf clubs we have, are secondary to are we living as disciples? Because guess what disciples will do, Tom, and you know this, they'll smile at people and welcome them in the parking lot.
Right.
They're happy to see them. This is I think super critical. So this is what we're trying to double down on. Whether people choose to collaborate with Focus or play alongside, that's up to God. We're not worried about that. We just want them to flourish in Christ and be faithful Catholics. It's the best thing in the world. It's really the only thing in the world when you think about it.
Oh, I love it. Curtis, I love that example too. Like, they've got to be plugged in order to work. And that is key.
That's one of the things that makes Curtis such a great communicator. Again, always trying to talk about communication. He's got these little analogies, the Scotty Scheffler analogy, the plugged in analogy, the pot analogy, right? In Made to Stick, they talk about being concrete and credible, or concrete. And Curtis just, you listen to them. So again, as always, if you're trying to learn how to be a better communicator, listen to Curtis because he's got these great analogies.
Those are so good.
None of them are mine. I've stolen them. I like research, but I've stolen them from other people.
That's all right. That's good.
They're just as effective. Now, Curtis, for our listeners who want to learn more, who want to support the mission or explore bringing Focus missionaries into their parish or campus, where can they go to find out more?
Yeah, the easiest way is focus.org. You can check out the webpage. But I always like to say, we are not so much looking for supporters. We need supporters. So if you want to support us, you can adopt a missionary, you can adopt a parish or a campus, or you can adopt our national program. And we need that. That's great. But Focus isn't designed to be a spectator sport where people pay money and sit in the seats. It is a full contact sport. We want you on the field. And so we would like to invite you to a deeper commitment to Jesus Christ and to his mission, which is to make disciples. And that's what we're doing, whether in all these areas, including our benefactors. I was just in a meeting yesterday. Super fun to look at our benefactors. They're on mission. And so they'll sit back and say, well, yeah, I'll send you $100 or whatever I'm going to send you, but how do I do what you do? And we are eager to work with anybody. If you're able to join us for Seek, Fort Worth is sold out, so you can't go to Fort Worth anymore, but Denver's got and literally probably less than 200 seats left out of 6,000. So it's probably going to sell out by the end of the weekend. And then we've maybe got 1,000 seats or maybe 1,500 seats left in Columbus, which is the biggest one. Join us for Seek. If you can't join us for Seek, check out Seek online. These are the best speakers in the world, the best teachers, and they're gathered together, but there's nothing like being there. Mm-hmm. So any way you want to do it, we'd love to share with you what we're doing, help you catch the vision that this is not only possible, but there's momentum here. And then what are the simple habits that you could live as a follower of Jesus Christ so that you could impart not just faithfulness, which is essential, but fruitfulness. So it's not just by osmosis that this is being passed on. And how do I get into people's lives in the midst of friendship and live as a friend that draws them into Christ's life and into his mission? But focus.org is the easiest way.
We will have that for them in the show notes too, focus.org, and some information about Seek for them too. Well, Curtis, thank you so much. Thank you for just the great insights today. Thank you for just sharing the heart of your mission and what you do. And thank you for all that you're doing through Focus. It's just incredible work.
Well, Melissa, I want to compliment you and Tom and the great work that's going on there in Timonium. I was actually passing through Timonium this past week and actually had dinner with a group of Tom just a few days ago. And I've been there a few times, been to Mass there. I love the fact that you all are faithfully seeking to make the Catholic faith more accessible to people and that you're helping other people to do it. I don't know anybody that's doing this the way you are. You've been at the tip of the spear. You guys are absolutely amazing. So if you're going to check out focus.org, please make sure that you're looking at Rebuilt as well, because it's extraordinary to see what's going on. And we're just looking to see, how can we serve you, Lord? How can more people love you? How can we glorify you in everything we do? And that's life for us.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much, Curtis.
Thank you, Curtis. It was great. This is awesome.
God bless.
Thank you. And to our listeners, we will see you next time.